The first thing is the growth illusion. And the hard truth is scaling from 3 million to 10 million isn't just about more work. It's really about more profitable work. And I think oftentimes people think about scaling around revenue or the amount of people, and that's not necessarily the case. The scaling is different for everyone. Everyone's going to have a different goal in mind. Good friends of mine have scaled their business back in the sense of reducing the amount of projects that they're doing, but they're increasing their profitability. So, don't be fooled by the illusion that, more work equals more profit, because that doesn't necessarily always jive. What that really is centered around is the systems, and without those systems, growth really leads to burnout. And for myself specifically, about 2 years ago, that's exactly where I was at. I was doing more revenue than I am today, but I was burnt out, and frankly, just wasn't making the profit that we should have been. And what the number one reason was visibility into my business, and I completely lost that visibility. We were just pushing to get work done, and I wasn't understanding where we really stood as a business. And what all of that scaling and growing and focus on revenue is really sheer force. But what I eventually realized is that I wasn't building a business. I was just building a machine that was, kind of being built as I was going. And there wasn't really a time to reflect and sit back and understand, am I actually doing something for the betterment of the business, or am I just creating a more chaotic job? And with those last two years, what has changed the most dramatically is the structure and the people, the leadership team, and understanding where our efficiencies could be improved. We wanted to understand how the business was growing, but also what numbers were really important for us to understand, so we could understand where we could create those efficiencies within the business itself.
All right. Well, appreciate you going through that. And I think that's like a really good foundation for us to kind of bring in an overview of the Intuit Enterprise Suite. I believe that what we're going to go ahead and talk about for a few minutes here are some of the systems that you can put in place, the things that you had talked about. Sometimes taking on more work isn't going to, essentially lead to growth. And so what we've done here at Intuit is release the Intuit Enterprise Suite. And this is where we give our customers the ability to have a system in place where they can manage multiple businesses. As you can see, I have multiple entities within a single suite. So if you have multiple QuickBooks Online accounts of different types, those all can come into our suite. And then you're probably familiar with some of the other tools that we have within the ecosystem, within the suite, such as payroll, or being able to pay your contractors, being able to manage all of your expenses and bills, and being able to have an integrated system where you have payroll, you have time tracking running, you can schedule your teams, you're able to book out resources against the projects and jobs that you're using, all using the breadth of Intuit's ecosystem in a system that isn't closed by any means. It's an open architecture, so you can bring in other applications. So I think it's great, that first topic that you brought forward, Nick, and I really believe that the Intuit Enterprise Suite is truly designed for businesses that have a complex business structure with lots of moving parts that could entail complex jobs, or things that we'll get into in a minute around job costing and profitability. Being able to see all of the information in one central spot to get to the types of analytics and dashboarding tools that we'll cover later is definitely a very valuable aspect of the Intuit Enterprise Suite.
So first things first is we need to understand our numbers, and we need to understand, cash flow. We need to understand gross profit. We need to understand our burn rate. And at the level of that $3 to $10 million, per year revenue, this isn't based on gut. I think, when I was doing $500,000 a year, gut was enough for me. I had, a set of quote unquote books, but it wasn't something that I was as in tune with as I am today, scaling upwards of 10 million and greater. But when you're in this realm, you really need to have a clear understanding of those numbers. And so I'll give you one example. Job costing was a requirement that we made 2 years ago, and this is really something that we took very seriously on all of our projects. And one of the number one reason was before looking at the entire business and how profitable the business was, we needed to know and also understand how profitable the projects were. I'll get to some real examples of how they weren't profitable and what was preventing that, but looking at the project specifically, we needed to make sure that each project individually was profitable. Now, that doesn't necessarily, in turn, mean that your business is profitable if you haven't, if you're overspending on overhead. And that's really where it came down to: what is our burn rate? How much money does it take to keep the lights on a monthly basis? So we started looking at this as a job costing perspective, and then understanding things like the burn rate for the business itself. And what this really allowed us to do is it was allowing us to catch overspending, before it hit the bank account. We wanted to make sure that each month the project was on track, we were hitting our margin, and then as a business, we were also spending what we had expected to spend on our burn rate and tracking it. Um, what this really did, and what was really instrumental in the success of it, was it moved the financial success of individual projects from the finance team to the field operations team. And the guys in the field were running the projects and understood where they were from a profitability perspective and an efficiency perspective. And they had the tools to make sure that that information was leaving the job site and going into the system or the dashboard that we're talking about. And they could understand that, hey, my project is on time and on budget. And what was imperative here was that we had the right software. And this is really where Intuit helped us tie all these layers together to make sure that all of the information leaving the job site was ending up in one spot. So then we had the opportunity to look at it holistically.
So thanks for that, Nick. So I really think that this is where we're going to spend a lot of our time in the Intuit Enterprise Suite project management tool. I'm going to bring in the project management component of IES to talk through exactly what you were just saying, job costing, getting to profitability. How do we track that in real time? So thinking through what we covered in the first section there at a very high level, which was the Intuit Enterprise Suite's capabilities to manage payroll, payments, time tracking, and then give you that, true fully burdened labor cost of what you're paying to your employees in payroll, and then how much revenue that you're generating for each one of those projects, and then understanding what the delta is, getting those true estimates versus actuals, and getting the overall performance of all of the projects aggregated into a central spot. And so that's what you'll see right here. What we're looking at is the project's homepage, where I can get some wonderful snapshots into the overall picture of how these projects are operating. I can just quickly hover over them and see where we're at in our overall income for this office project that I'm highlighting right now. It's showing me that my income is currently at 60,000, but my estimated is at 120,000. If I want to dive into that, we can go into the projects list view and get a snapshot of the projects. But what I'd like to do is go into one of the projects here quickly and show you some of where the information from all those other modules ends up. So for folks like Nick who are trying to see the business, holistically and a 10,000 foot view, and aren't maybe getting in too deep into the weeds on things, they want to make sure that when they come in and take a look at a project, that the data that they're seeing makes sense to them. So I'd imagine, Nick's running a project, he'd probably want to come in and see where he's currently at with his actuals versus, his estimates. And so looking through the overview page here, you can see we're quickly organizing the information in a visual way towards where you can see the total amount that you've of income that you've generated, and then the amount of costs that you've currently incurred, and then what your overall profit for that project is. And then we can give you a real-time profit margin calculation on that as the projects progress. So it looks like some money needs to come in on this project. And it looks like we've probably got a couple of things that we want to get done. So I would assume if we're trying to bring in some money here, we'd probably want to add in some tasks to the other folks from the team to make sure that they know that they need to come in and start billing against some of the transactions that we currently see here in the project. As I mentioned, the time activity, which is connected to our payroll tool, which is connected to the projects, all comes in here. So you can get that very accurate job costing layer of data in the project. So you can see here that Laura came in and she spent 28 total hours of billable time, which cost the company $2,100, but the billable amount is $3,600. So again, seeing some of those deltas there and then being able to quickly add in those records into the project in real time. So if I wanted to, say, add in a invoice, I could bring in that billable time quickly in one click, and then also tracking the overall profitability of these projects using the reporting tools that we have out of the box. So you don't have to make any of these. These come straight ready to go. So tracking things like profitability, time cost by employee or vendor, keeping track of your unbilled time and expenses, your estimates versus actuals, your WIP reports or your work in progress reports by project, seeing all of your committed costs by projects, and then following all the way through to your project profitability summary reports. So all of those are come standard out of the box in IES, ready for you to work. So again, tying a bow on it before I hand it back to you, Nick, where if you're in the Intuit Enterprise Suite, you've got payroll, payments, time tracking, projects all running congruently. All of this data will all find its way home. And the last thing that I'll mention is if there are any changes to the projects over the course of it, such as changes to estimates, we will keep a track of all of those changes in the change log for auditing and reporting purposes. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Nick, but those are some of the tools that I imagine you probably would have wished you had like maybe 5 or 6 years ago when things were getting crazy.
And I think about the last 2 years and just, all of the things that we've put in place and working with different levels of software, and just what we've always tried to accomplish. And really what that it can be centered around is the financial clarity of, the business.